All right, today on Heavy Metal Frequency, I'm reviewing Felix Martin, the Scenic album. This is a very interesting sort of metal-ish album. I would consider this more metal adjacent because after the first three tracks, the Tango 1, the Tango 2, and the Tango 3, it's a little bit less of a metal album, but it comes back to that at some point. So the Tango is split into three tracks, and it's this really interesting, almost like thrash, progressive metal, jazz, gypsy jazz, funk song. It accomplishes a lot of stuff over the course of this three-part track, like a three-movement track split into three separate tracks. It's very interesting. Triangle Tune is one of my favorite songs on here, and it's a very interesting, has a very interesting and fascinating arpeggio structure that you can really, it's just something I would listen to. This is yet another one of those albums that I would say you just go over it and over it and listen to it and study it and break it down, piece it back together. You can kind of screw up songs for your ear by overtraining your ear, but then once you train your ear to break everything down, you have to train it to put it back together. It's easier than it sounds, and it sounds kind of strange, but there's all kinds of stuff on here. Some of the tracks have almost like funk blast beats. There's a really awesome video on YouTube of Felix Martin playing blast beats on his double neck guitars. And also you'll notice this has a headstock. This was released before Felix launched FM guitars. This is also signed by Felix, which is cool. Yay. So there's all kinds of interesting and fascinating stuff on here. There's another multi-part track called Vero Liano Tries Prog, Vero Liano Tries Jazz, and Vero Liano Tries Metal, and it's not as compartmentalized as that. The different genres bleed into each other on this. There's all kinds of different stuff, like progressive rock, progressive metal, thrash, and all kinds of stuff across this album. And it's something that you really need to spend a lot of time with, and I feel like I'm skirting over a lot because I love this, and I would really like you to look it up on YouTube, buy a copy. I think it's harder to find now, which is just buy a digital copy or support Felix in some way. Check out FM Guitars and all this great stuff, because this is a fantastic metal adjacent album, and so it's also a very interesting. This is one of those albums that some bands like to say this really breaks down what actually defines a metal band. And this is one of those albums where I would say this is actually fairly accurate. It's also interesting because after this, I feel like Felix started to use a lot more Latin jazz, and this is kind of the precursor to that. It's really interesting. Like with a lot of artists, he's changed various nuances and timbres over the course of his albums, and it's just really interesting for me. And so there are some, like, Troublemaker Studios-esque Latin jazz elements. I'll look up Troublemaker Studios, find out what that is. It's a whole thing. Robert Rodriguez, and so it's great. So I highly recommend this, and just spend a lot of time with it. This is one of those albums you don't really have to. It's very accessible, even without just poring over the technicality, because Felix is that good at what he does. He's a conservatory-trained Berkeley graduate. It's highly impressive musical resume. So please look this up. He's a great guy. He's a fantastic musician. This is an amazing album, and if you're into jazz, metal, whatever, this is fantastic, and I highly recommend you buy a copy. Thank you.